Good morning, YouTube. Warbles on a lot here. Sunday, the 23rd of October, with the dag into the Outsiders, followed by the first dog on the moon.
For me, and we know that. Well, obviously, I don't want Trump to win, and Hillary's a better option. We know she's not going to change anything for the better. She's just going to continue the status quo.
And
so,
this, Sarah, is where we sort of square the circle to our own politics, because I think we can sense those frustrations equally here.
I think they're universal frustrations, and I think Trump has been very effective. Look, the parallel's been made before, but I've long observed. I was furious when Bernie Sanders threatened to derail Hillary Clinton's run for the nomination, because I really see him and Trump as playing the same card, just on opposite sides of the political spectrum.
It's interesting that it appeals on both sides of the spectrum, of course.
It is, but look, I don't think that is that unusual. I mean, people bristle at the comparison, but we see the Greens sometimes have a little bit more in common with Pauline Hanson and One Nation that they would like to admit. I'm sure it's a characterization that leaves both of them uncomfortable, but there's truth to it. They are appealing to disaffected people, to people that feel that the major parties, and as Parnell said, the institutions like the media are part of this conspiracy. And of course, that is what Trump is capitalizing on when he is laying the groundwork here to reject when the people speak on November 8.
We are all somewhat disaffected, I think, because of time.
That's
afraid.
Right. And
no, because of time. It's against us. Sarah Lavaquan, columnist, editor-in-chief at Stella Mag AU, you will find her. Parnell Palmer-McGuinness, communications consultant. You'll see her writings in the Specky. Jane Gilmore, freelance writer, also have been our outsiders this morning. And I promised you a special First Dog on the Moon investigation this morning, and I will deliver. Hello, patriots. Welcome to First Dog on the Moon's Guide to Modern Living. I'm Walkley Award-winning cartoonist for The Guardian Australia, First Dog on the Moon. This week, part 74 in our 195-part series, Australia, How Doomed Is It? In this episode, housing affordability. Is buying a first home an impossible dream for young people? So-called millennials, just drug-addicted wastrels frittering away their trust funds on fancy breakfasts when they could be saving their cash in a pillowcase under the mattress in the spare room? Or are they really the hapless victims of an aging boomerocracy, an octogenarian regime of greedy old folk using their gold-plated hip replacements to squeeze kiddies out of the housing market like so many pips in a seedless watermelon? Let's find out. We went and spoke to some millennials at a hipster hangout. Apparently they call it Time Zone. Look, hello, I'm looking for... Oh, there they are. You there, young people. Are you having trouble affording your first home? Us? No, we're just avocados. We don't care about buying a boring house. We just want to go out and get smashed. Yeah, get smashed, that's right. Smashed avocados. That could be the problem right there. We followed this group of young avocados in their many attempts to get smashed when they could have been saving money or getting a proper job writing pompous, pointless, unreadable columns for the Australian newspaper. So how did the avocados go getting smashed? Our first avocado tried it with a carton of passion fruit and vodka UDLs. On this occasion, the avocado was quite successfully smashed. We gave it 9 out of 10. The next avocado stood in path of an oncoming steam locomotive. We only gave that a 6 out of 10 because the avocado was later booked by an inspector for not having a ticket. Now, this avocado was talked at by Malcolm Turnbull until it flung itself from the kitchen bench.
Import ban, which expired in August this year. So I can't take it anymore. I'm going to fling myself off this kitchen bench.
We gave this effort 7 out of 10. But we know it would have been a lot more smashed if Tony Abbott had been Prime Minister. We left one avocado on Barnaby Joyce's seat in the House of Representatives. He sat down, and when he stood up, the avocado was gone. Let's not think about it too much. This avocado was run down by a stampeding herd of old people at the Murwillumbah RSL on $6 roasting night. We hit one with a brick, dropped one off Erica Betts' head. I'm not gay anymore! And this avocado was shot 5 times with an Adler A110 shotgun. I'm not smashed yet! And that's why Australia needs the Adler A110 with a 7-shot magazine to solve the problem of housing affordability. You're welcome, Australia. This has been F on the Moon for the First Dog on the Moon Institute.
And that's it for Sunday Extra this week.
Yeah, that was an excellent first dog. I really liked it. The visual image of Barney Baby Joyce sitting on an avocado and standing up, and the avocado's disappeared because he sucked it up his rectum. Yep, I can pat on the head, first dog. I like that one. Okay, so to review things, since it's been elected, the Turnbull government has lost control of the parliament when several of its members ran away early to get the last departing flight from Canberra to Western Australia, or Canberra to Sydney, or Canberra to Brisbane, wherever they wanted to run to, which allowed the opposition to pass, I think it was 2, might have been 3 votes against the government. Then they kind of sorted that out, and basically the opposition let the government off the hook. Next thing they did wrong was their manager of business in the House voted in favour of an opposition amendment which condemned the government's entire bill. So the government then voted against itself. Now we've got the existing Prime Minister calling the previous Prime Minister a liar, because the previous Prime Minister says, I did not do any deal with the Fruit Loop Tea Pottiest Libertarian Senator Lying Holm from Queensland. Senator Lying Holm has an email from the Prime Minister's office saying that, yes, we agree to your demands to put a sunset clause onto the legislation to ban this particular gun. So he feels like he's actually forced the issue, and he's got to think. The Minister for Justice and the Minister for some other bloody thing, Customs or whatever it was, who were actually nutting out the deal, they say that the Prime Minister's office was definitely in on the negotiations and part of it, knew all about it. Tony Abbott says, I was the Prime Minister and I didn't do any deal at all. The obvious answer is that the screw that held the Abbott cabinet together was a woman called Peter Credlin, who ran Tony Abbott on like he was a puppet on strings. Obviously, the Minister for Justice and the Immigration Minister or the Customs Minister, they were talking to Peter Credlin. Peter Credlin was talking to Linehelm, and she didn't tell Tony Abbott what was happening because Peter Credlin was effectively administering Australia at the time. That's why Tony Abbott's on the back bench. So the issue in this situation is that 20 years ago, semi-automatic long arms were banned. Effectively, unless you've got a special quality license because, you know, you've overrun with pigs and you need to shoot them from a helicopter and you want to go and get a self-loading centerfire rifle for the helicopter sniper to use. Shotguns, pump-action shotguns, which had more than 5 rounds in the magazine, they were banned, although people, I think perhaps possibly, were able to block part of the magazine. Maybe not. I don't have a gun licence and I'm not right up on it. But the point is 5-round capacity for shotguns. And I don't think at the time there were any lever action shotguns on the market 20 years ago. Spool it forward a bit. Australia hasn't had a gun massacre since Port Arthur. The reason we haven't had a gun massacre since Port Arthur is that in Australia, how do you define massacre? Do you spell it with 2 Q's and a small f? Kind of, sort of. In Australia, a massacre is not a massacre unless the perpetrator produces, generates, or manufactures 4 or more dead bodies, not counting themselves. What this means is that your bankrupted farmer can come home from the final meeting and he can shoot his missus and his 2 or 3 kids as well as himself, and that's not a gun massacre. That is a domestic violence tragedy. That's how it gets reported in the news in Australia. It's not a gun massacre unless more than 4 people are killed, and that can't count the perpetrator. So when was the last time Muslims in Australia fighting in defence of the Islamic Caliphate had a massacre? The answer is the 1st of January 1915, when 2 Afghans ambushed the Broken Hill New Year's Day picnic train on its way to the Menindee Lakes at a place called Silver Hill. Look it up in the history books. Big thing, you know. 5 people died. 5 people died, right? 7 if you count the 2 Afghans wearing homemade Turkish uniforms and were waving a homemade Turkish flag. There was an Asian student, I don't know which country in Asia he was from, but he didn't actually speak English well enough to understand the lectures, so he took a couple of legally permitted semi-automatic target pistols to his lecture, and he shot a few people, but he didn't kill more than 4 people, so that's not a gun massacre, even though it happened since Port Arthur. So anyway, spool it forward. The Adler shotgun was invented. It has a 7-round magazine, and it's a lever action instead of a pump action. It's just as fast as a lever action. Pump actions are not as fast as semi-automatics. Semi-automatics are banned, so that's not part of the discussion. The problem with this shotgun is that it was not mentioned at all in the original legislation. The people who want to import them are saying, oh, but there's nothing about lever action shotguns. You should allow us to bring it in. The people who don't want it to come in are saying, yeah, well, you know, like it's got a 7-round magazine. We don't want it for that reason. The people who want to bring them in are saying, oh, but feral pigs, feral pigs. And my comment would be like this. If you've already missed with the first 5 shots, all you got in front of you is cordite smoke and dust from the pigs running away. Unless you're shooting at pink pigs in blue suits. And in that case, yes, having 40% more shots in the locker is going to give your average Fruit Loop who decides to go and shoot up the local police station a decided advantage. What's behind it all? Lionhelm is what he calls a libertarian. He's not interested in banning anything until after it's already created chaos and mayhem. He doesn't see why law-abiding people should be prevented from owning whatever they want to own because they can be trusted not to fuck up with it. He's not considering the fact that the person most likely to be shot by a gun is the owner of the gun, followed by the gun owner's partner, followed by their children, followed by anybody else who lives in the house, followed by the neighbours. That's based on asking people or interrogating the records when people turn up at the morgue with a gunshot injury. Who owned the gun that caused the injury? Thing is, one of Lionhelm's mates is a firearms importer and dealer, and he's got an option on a warehouse for the 5,000 of these guns. And he's been assured that, you know, yeah, we can massage this through the parliament. We can let you have your 7-shot. And it isn't happening. But it's tearing the Turnbull government to pieces. Meanwhile, well, yeah, Trump's officially admitted that he wants to have American Civil War 2.0 if he doesn't get elected. He's only going to accept the election result if he wins because he can't imagine that America would vote for anybody other than him because I have a winning temperament. Yeah, he's a groper. You know, there's now 10 or 12 women who've come forward to mention the times that he's grabbed a hold of bits of them without invitation. Oh, it's a funny little world we live in. And meanwhile, ISIL is leaving Syria, and it'll be setting up new headquarters in Turkey, which was taken over by the Boko Haram faction of the Islamo-fascists run by President Erdogan. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Won't be fun when Turkey gets ISIL. Ciao.